Okay, I am back and we are live on YouTube. So I am going to share my screen. Okay. All right, so welcome to a community conversation with the mayor and our panel of guests. We thank you for your interest in the City of Lebanon Police Department and its operations. And positive change can only occur when all stakeholders have an opportunity to participate. Police operations are a serious issue right now, nationally, and most likely this topic may require additional meetings. And we will determine that after we review the comments that are received tonight. So our plan for this evening is to share some information based on comments generated from the protest held in June, a petition submitted shortly thereafter, and also based on questions raised by the community. After this presentation, we will hold a conversation between members of our panel and the community members who are participating this evening. So our panel tonight includes Michael Miller, who is an employment and labor law attorney with Eckerd Siemens, focusing on the management side of that area. He graduated from the University of Pittsburgh and Duquesne Law, and Mike and I have worked together for 22 years now. Tricia Springer is an employment, labor, and administrative law attorney with Eckerd Siemens, and she specializes in the Pennsylvania right to know law. And Tricia graduated from Lebanon Valley College and the Widener Law School. Holly Leahy is the Mental Health, Intellectual Disabilities Early Intervention Program Administrator for Lebanon County since October of last year. And prior to holding that position, Holly was the County Director of Mental Health Services for more than 9 years. And she also is a graduate of Lebanon Valley College. So we have some proud alumni here tonight. So Chief Todd Briner, he's been with the Lebanon Police Department for 25 years. He started as a patrol officer in 1995, was assigned to the crime division as a detective in 2000. Later in 2002, he became part of the County City Uniformed Narcotics Team and was made co-coordinator in 2003. He was promoted to patrol sergeant in 2005, lieutenant of the detectives in 2007, captain in 2009, and then chief in 2016. Enoch Ayala has been employed as a police officer with the City of Lebanon since June of 2007. So he's representing the city proudly for 13 and a half years. Enoch is a valuable member of our team, assisting our detectives with translations during the interview process on serious crimes. He's a member of our emergency services unit. Some refer to that as a SWAT team. He's been on that for 6 years, and that's really an honor because you have to be selected for that unit. And for the past 3 years, Enoch has been our go-to officer for our career days in the schools. And it's important, I believe, for our students to see a local Hispanic officer on the force, that they have someone, hopefully, that they can look up to and acknowledge that he's local, he grew up here, and they can be whatever they want to be, including a police officer. So Officer Ayala is a great representation of the Lebanon Police Department. And then, of course, myself serving on the panel as well. So that is our panel for this evening. Again, this event is also being live streamed to the city's YouTube channel, which is Lebanon, PA City Council, for those who are unable to join us and participate in the event this evening. So I believe it's important for you to hear a little about Lebanon City's history and demographics, as well as what police department policies we have had in place, new policies that have been implemented, and how operations have evolved to where we are today. So the next 2 slides, I'm going to move that over there. Okay. So the next 2 slides are the topics that I will briefly update you on tonight and hopefully provide you with a more informative background on police operations in the city. Just want to give you a chance to look at those. So our first category is our history and demographics. So you can reference on the chart that our population has significantly changed over the last 20 years. Originally, we were founded in 1740 as Stites Town, and we were incorporated into a city in 1885. We are one of 57 cities in Pennsylvania, and our population actually peaked in 1960 at slightly over 30,000. Our population currently, as of the last census anyhow, was 25,477. And that was actually the first increase since 1960. And we've been increasing ever since in just like 1–2% each census. There are only 15 cities that are larger than Lebanon in our state. And again, going back to our population, you can see based on the demographics, when you look from the 2000 census to the 2010 and then the 2019 American Community Survey, which is also through the US Census Bureau, but until we get our numbers from the 2020 census, which just ended, we are permitted to use this for when we apply for grants and for data collection, data usage, we're allowed to use these numbers. Our Hispanic population, as you can see here, has more than doubled. And I believe that that percentage will actually be even higher than the 44% when we actually get our 2020 census numbers. Our Black population slightly increased over the last 20 years, but it has decreased by 1% in the last 10 years. So our number of officers. You can see from the slide that over the last 60 years, except for a few years, we have maintained a fairly consistent number of officers. In order to address a significant budget shortfall from the prior administration and to address the increasing cost of salaries and benefits, my administration lessened the number of supervisors so that we could keep about the same number of officers on the street. And if you remember from the prior slide, our peak in population was in 1960 with slightly more than 30,000 residents. Our population then continued to decrease until 2010 when it has been slightly increasing ever since. An analysis was conducted by the United Nations using 2018 data that indicates the average number of police officers per 100,000 inhabitants. And the result for the United States is 238. According to that average, Lebanon City should have about 60 police officers for our population. As you can see, we have 41. The per capita approach to staffing is popular because it's easy to comprehend and apply, although the International Association of Chiefs of Police do not recommend using that method. They did publish an article on this very same method, quoting a department should have a ratio of 2.5 full-time officers per 1,000 residents. And using that approach, the city should have about 64 officers. The least common approach is to make staffing decisions based on actual workload. And this is an approach that the city would like to review further. The International City-County Management Association is a strong advocate of that approach as it relies on actual levels of demand for police services and matches that demand with the supply of police resources. But regardless of the method used, it all comes down to the budget and what a community can actually afford. So as you can see on this chart, 2018 represented the lowest overall count in Part 1 crimes since we formally started reporting crime numbers, which is more than 20 years. 2019 was the second lowest count at 712. And that was an increase of 33 incidents from 2018, our lowest year. 2019 represents a 5% increase from 2018, and it's mainly due to thefts, as you can see under larceny. Looking back to when we first started to track, serious crime has decreased in the city of Lebanon by 42%. Now, additionally, I'd like to add that our clearance rates, which are an indicator of how departments measure their ability to solve crime, we've exceeded the national average in all Part 1 crime statistical reporting groups, and that is really admirable. And this information is important for you to know because I think that we do a great job at solving crime in the city. So this chart, and I'm going to give you a minute to look at it, it breaks down the number of criminal arrests and also non-traffic citations for the past 3 years, and the number and percentage by race and ethnicity, tongue-tied. So if you can just look through the chart, you can see, and if you remember again from one of the first slides, our Black population is about 5%, Hispanic 44%. So you can get a general idea based on the total number of counts in the two categories where we stand. Now the next slide, I think it breaks it down. It's the same number of arrests and citations, but I sorted them by Hispanic and non-Hispanic with a comparison to the percentage of the population. So as you can see, and again, I'll give you here a couple seconds to look at this so you can take it all in, but I think a reasonable person would be able to determine that the number of arrests and citations for Black or Hispanics based on their percentage of population in the city are not out of line. So I think that's important to note as well. So our next topic is community policing. And the central goal of community policing is for the police to build relationships with the community through interactions with local agencies and members of the public, creating partnerships and strategies for reducing crime and disorder. Here are types of interactions that my office and the police department are involved in on an ongoing basis. We have developed some long tenured relationships with community members and organizations. The first item in particular is an important community policing tool, and the initiative is called Park, Walk, and Talk. The patrol officers will stop in a neighborhood and they'll walk the streets and they'll engage with the residents. And it's a way for them to develop relationships with people in a neighborhood so they will feel more comfortable with the police officers and the department as a whole. We also perform this type of policing if there are specific concerns in a neighborhood. And then we can then determine if we need to place additional resources there in that particular neighborhood. In 2019, we performed 138 Park, Walk, and Talk details. In addition to our Park, Walk, and Talk details, we devoted 140 hours to 83 community events. And you can see the types of community events I'm talking about: our Neighborhood Watch Association meetings, National Night Out, our officer-friendly radio show. The third Saturday, we do a police read to me to the kids. We do Walk with the Cop and Walk with the Mayor, Bigs in Blue, which is a part of the Big Brothers and Big Sisters program. The police department has sponsored a T-ball team, and of course, other community events in the city. Our next topic is diversification efforts of the department. So although we do not ask our employees what race or ethnic group they identify with, we recognize and we want our department to be more diversified. With a population that is made up of more than 44% Hispanic and 5% Black or African American, our makeup does not match those percentages. So what have we done to try and change that? So 3 years ago, we started to advertise vacancies in National Minority Update, which allows us to effectively target qualified minority candidates. Approximately 2 years ago, we switched to Police App, which is a national online employment application, and that was in order to reach a larger recruitment area, including areas that are more diversified. And we also, in order to financially assist people of lower income or of color so that they can afford the mandatory police officer academy training, 2 years ago, the city implemented an initiative for everyone to reimburse or pay for the cost of the training. So looking at training, and this is not only for patrol officers, but it's for leadership as well. So all officers receive annual training that incorporates certain types of training required by MOPEC. And MOPEC is the Municipal Police Officers Education and Training Commission. That is the organization that certifies all police officers. This required training, and which is annually, includes coursework based on relevant situations occurring in our country, like right now, it's de-escalation and use of force, in addition to legal updates, firearms, and first aid CPR training. Now, Chief Briner used to be a trainer himself, and him and other past chiefs like Chief Wright and Chief Harvey recognized that we have a highly trained department, and they believed that the training requirement by MOPEC was not enough. And they identified areas that they thought needed to be renewed or reviewed annually, like the use of force, use of the taser, de-escalation, and scenario training based on changes in the law. Those are things they do every year. It's not something that MOPEC requires every year. Some of these things MOPEC is going to require based on what has happened in the last year. But this is something that we have been doing for many years on our own because we felt it was necessary. Additionally, some of our officers received sensitivity training until last year when we mandated it for all employees annually, not just police officers, but all of our employees. So many of our officers also have had training in mental health first aid. However, over the next 2.5 months, all of our patrol officers and supervisors will receive this training through a partnership with Crisis Intervention. We also have had a conversation with Crisis on ways to create a more inclusive working and training relationship. So body-worn cameras. The city applied for a 50-50 match grant for body-worn cameras. And we received notification last week that our grant application was approved. So we're very excited for that. The matching dollar amount was placed in the 2021 budget. So as soon as we can process the application, on 1/1, we could actually order it. Now, there are several reasons to acquire body-worn cameras. One, of course, to improve officer accountability, improve community relations, enhance officer training, and improve evidence quality or make cases easier to prosecute. So discipline of patrol officers and leadership. So when an officer is alleged to have committed an offense, the captain, who is not a part of the bargaining unit or union, conducts an investigation and makes a recommendation to the chief. Now, if it's founded and represents a serious offense, then the chief makes a recommendation to the mayor for discipline. A decision for appropriate action is made in accordance with contractual and labor laws. And if the officer does not agree with the action, the officer may appeal the decision to the Civil Service Commission, which body is made up of 3 citizens independent from the police department or the mayor's office. The officer also could file a grievance, and the last step of a grievance would be a hearing before an independent arbitrator who is not affiliated with either party and usually not even a local person. It's more of a regional position. So what's the policy and procedures for complaints and investigations against officers? So we do have a policy in place for this process, and trust is built when citizens feel that the police department listens and appropriately responds to their valid concerns and opinions. An accessible, fair, and transparent complaint process is the hallmark of police responsiveness to the community. I truly believe that. And it's incumbent on the police department to make its citizens aware that a complaint process exists, how to file a complaint, and how the department processes and investigates complaints. So if you look at the bullet points here, a written complaint must be filed, and that would be reviewed by the captain, again, who is outside of the union. The captain will decide whether he will investigate the complaint if it's a serious complaint, or if he will assign it to the officer's immediate supervisor. But I can tell you, as long as I've been mayor, I believe the captain has always investigated them. The investigating officer will contact the complainant. They'll set up an interview, and they'll talk to the complainant and conduct an investigation. including not only interviewing the complainant, but any witnesses. And then one of the following conclusions would be made. Is a complaint sustained? Meaning, is it determined to have occurred? An assessment is made to determine the level of discipline. Does the officer need to be retrained? Do they need to be counseled? Was the complaint, did it have insufficient facts? That there just weren't enough facts to prove whether the incident occurred or not? Or would the officer, could they be exonerated that the incident occurred, but the officer did not actually violate any laws or any city police policies or procedures? And then the last one would be unfounded, that the investigation determined that the incident actually did not occur. So then after the investigation is completed and a decision is made on what the conclusion of the investigation was, then the complainant would be notified of the findings and the disposition of the complaint. So looking over the last 3 years, you can see in 2018, we had more than 1,100 arrests and 956 people taken into central booking. And out of those arrests, we had 14 complaint forms issued and only one returned for investigation. And that was a Hispanic female on behalf of a Hispanic male. And it involved a search issue by the Drug Task Force. The detective moved a Bible and placed a piece of clothing over it. In 2019, we had a little over 1,000 arrests and 1,000 taken into central booking, and there were 13 complaint forms issued and only 3 returned for investigation. And those 3 were a Hispanic female returned for a rudeness complaint. They wanted the officer to know he was rude. A white female returned one for a use of force complaint, and the results were unfounded, but the officer was disciplined for violating a motor vehicle policy during the event. And then the third one was a white female who returned one for rudeness as well. And the complainant had thought that the officer overstepped checking on the welfare of her grandchildren. This year, out of 846 arrests, and this is as of mid-November, and 671 taken into central booking, there were 5 complaint forms issued to 1 Black, 2 white, and 2 Hispanic, and none were returned so far for investigation. So regarding citizen involvement in this process, the city's complaint and investigation process has been reviewed by the appropriate state agency involved in this area, and they found no issues with the city's process. Now, citizen involvement may not be feasible, warranted, or necessary in all communities. I believe it's important that we take position after a careful and detailed analysis of existing problems, costs, weigh alternative methods of reviewing internal matters in a way that maintains and/or improves the community's trust. So now we're going to move to use of force. This chart is the use of any type of force. So again, it's looking at the past 3 years. And you can see this would include use of force of hands. So in 2018, again, with a little over 1,100 arrests and 956 taken into central booking, 56 times a use of force report was required. They were for 4 Black, 32 white, and 20 Hispanic. There were 5 times that firearms were pointed, 10 tasers, 3 laser display with no deployment, 2 sprays, and 36 hands. In 2019, you can see the number of arrests and how many we took into booking. 61 times a use of force report was required. And that was for 4 Black, 20 white, and 37 Hispanic. Again, as you can see on the chart, 6 times a firearm was pointed, 5 use of tasers, 5 laser display with no deployment, 3 spray, and 42 hands. And then, so far this year, 21 times a use of force report was required, 5 Black, 9 white, 7 Hispanic, no firearms pointed, 1 taser, no laser display, 0 sprays, and then 2 knee strikes and 18 hands. So I think a reasonable person looking at that could deduct from the slide that the city typically uses the least amount of force necessary. So now we're going to move on to mental health. And I think this is an area where there is a lot of concern. And I'm going to ask Holly Leahy if she will actually go over this slide for us.
So the first bullet point is that individuals with serious and untreated mental health and substance use conditions often encounter barriers that prevent them from receiving what is perceived as the right services. Barriers could include, but not limited to, laws, regulations, guidelines, and eligibility criteria that sometimes become barriers in and of themselves. First and foremost, we must ensure that we do not infringe upon an individual's civil rights. All services and supports are voluntary unless there is court involvement. A concrete example of a potential barrier is eligibility criteria to receive services, supports, and funding through the county mental health program. You must hold a diagnosis of what is called serious mental illness, and that is a diagnosis included of schizophrenia, bipolar, major depressive disorder recurring, and personality disorder. I'll give just several examples of how these could play out in our community. One might be an individual with a mental illness diagnosis is doing well in the community on psychotropic medication, but chooses to discontinue their medication unless the individual has been deemed incompetent by the court system or on an involuntary outpatient commitment requiring medication intervention compliance. Per the law, we cannot force the individual to take the medication. Another example might be an individual is brought to crisis intervention for potential commitment to psychiatric examination and treatment, but the individual does not choose to be voluntarily committed, nor do they meet the criteria for involuntary commitment. We cannot hold them against their will. And let me just stop here and state the criteria for involuntary treatment. The Mental Health Procedures Act states that whenever an individual is severely mentally disabled and in need of immediate treatment, he or she may be subject to involuntary examination and treatment. An individual is severely mentally disabled when his or her ability to demonstrate self-control, judgment, and discretion in the handling of his or her affairs and social relations to care for his or her own personal needs is so diminished that he or she poses a clear and present danger to harm others or harm him or herself as a result of his or her mental illness. It is important to know that it must be because of their mental illness. Lebanon County has sound resources, mental health services and supports for those uninsured or for services that are not covered through insurance can be funded through the Lebanon County Mental Health Program if the individuals meet the eligibility criteria of serious mental illness. We receive state, federal, and county funds for service delivery. As these financial resources become tighter, we are more dependent than ever on our stakeholder advisory groups to guide service delivery. We have multiple advisory stakeholder groups that we meet with on a regular basis, but it is important that individuals from our Lebanon County community participate in the stakeholder groups and help to guide how the funds are spent. We need to hear from the community. An important advisory group is our Lebanon Criminal Justice Advisory Board. We meet on a bi-monthly basis to discuss issues related to the justice system and goals for improvement within our county. Through the years, many programs have been implemented to address the needs of individuals with mental illness or substance use in the justice system, including a veterans court, day reporting center, a pretrial program, and DUI court, just to name a few. Over the past year, we have researched several options to address the needs of individuals with mental illness and/or substance use to avoid becoming involved with the justice system. The two options include Team MESA, which stands for Mental Illness, Substance Abuse, and the Stepping Up Initiative. After extensive research and observation of both options in their respective counties, CJAB has determined that Team MESA is the best option for Lebanon County at this time. We are currently in development and implementation of Team MESA. Team MESA was developed to divert low-risk individuals with mental illness and other special needs from prison in the very early stages of incarceration or before sentencing. A team will meet on a monthly basis to discuss specific cases that are at risk for justice involvement or at the early stages of incarceration to develop diversion plans for those individuals. Key members will include the district attorney, public defender, mental health, intellectual disability services, county drug and alcohol services, local and/or state police, central booking, the deputy warden of treatment, Lebanon County Correctional Facility medical staff, or in our case, prime care, probation services, and the Lebanon Community Action Partnership. And we do have priorities developed to effectively work relationships and processes between the systems, to reduce jail time for individuals with mental illness as well as other special needs, to expand community treatment options, to educate team members about mental illness, special needs, and substance abuse, and to increase early diversion options. It is important to note the Team MESA is something that can be developed with no additional cost to the county. And then that kind of moves us into the mental funds, health funds that were cut by the state in 2012 by 10%. The county mental health program is instrumental in maintaining services and supports and developing new services and supports when possible, as long as there is adequate funding to do so. The Lebanon County Human Services Plan gives great detail as to all the services and supports provided through the county mental health program. And without adequate funding, it will force the county program to make tough decisions as to what programs can continue and what will need to end. We are hopeful for continued flat funding, but it's not always guaranteed. The Lebanon County Human Services Plan can be found on the Lebanon County website under the Mental Health, Intellectual Disabilities, Early Intervention Department page. And finally, there are many opportunities to become involved with the Lebanon County Mental Health Program and positively affect mental health service delivery. So if you have interest in that, please feel free to contact me.
Thank you, Holly. So what actions have we taken to improve law enforcement response to mental health calls? So the city did commence conversations with county social agencies regarding existing services and possible new programs with the goal that individuals with mental health issues avoid future encounters with law enforcement. We've also scheduled for all patrol officers and supervisors through crisis intervention mental health training, and there will be 3 training sessions, one in December, one in January and February of next year. And then at that point, all of the patrol officers and supervisors will have received it. As I mentioned earlier, some of our officers already have this, but this will represent the entire department. And although the city recognizes that mental health services is more of a county function, the city will cooperate and, if feasible, collaborate with county agencies to explore ways for the county to use sound best practices solutions when finding alternatives for serving this population, meaning we will have a continued dialogue and interest in this. Probably everyone is familiar with this. This is something, our commitment to racial equity that we released in June of this year. Some of these commitments were in place during my entire tenure as mayor of Lebanon City, but some are new. You can see in the parentheses the new bullet points. I'm not going to take a lot of time to go over these tonight. It's something that we've talked about in public session, and if you'd like to see it, it is on the police department's page on our city website. But you can see it details the use of force, our hiring, training, discipline, alternative approaches, and our involvement with other city departments and what we're trying to do, again, to promote more racial equity in the city of Lebanon. The chief and I attended a local anti-racism workshop facilitated by SARC and other community leaders. We recognize that this issue is evolving and we have more to learn, and it is a process. But we are committed to improvement in this area. And by attending the workshop and taking actions, we believe we are on the right course. By holding this conversation tonight and listening to our community, we believe will be helpful in our commitment to racial equity, social justice, and police operations in the city of Lebanon. So, safe policing for safe communities. This is the president mandated all law enforcement agencies certify to two things, and that is that they adhere to all federal, state, and local laws that apply regarding the use of force policies, and also that they maintain a use of force policy that prohibits the use of chokeholds, except in situations where justified to use deadly force, as allowed by law. So the city had these policies in place for decades, except for the use of chokeholds. The city never trained to use them, nor endorsed the technique when apprehending someone. So by adding the ban to our policy does not change our behavior, but it does make it more clear and puts it in writing. So we do comply with the mandatory certification, and we did submit our certification letter to the appropriate agency. These are the 10 items that are not required, but the Department of Justice has set forth that a department should consider incorporating these principles within its policies and procedures. And I can assure you, and I'll go over them very quickly: adherence to constitutional standards, termination of use of force, duty to intervene, training protocols on use of force and de-escalation, appropriate medical care, warn before shooting, shooting at or from a moving vehicle, warning shots, no knock warrant, early intervention systems, hiring of personnel, and community engagement. The city possesses all of those outlined policies and procedures. So we were able to certify that we comply with the 2 mandatory and the 10 discretionary. There were also some police reform bills that were passed in Pennsylvania. The governor released this list of items to us in October. Statewide database of police misconduct will prevent departments from unknowingly hiring officers with past records of misconduct. So regarding that database, the city will comply when the database is made available. The bill also requires thorough background checks for law enforcement applicants prior to being employed, and it also requires a law enforcement agency to disclose employment information. Well, the city already completes comprehensive backgrounds on all of our police officer applicants, and the city will comply with the disclosing information requirement when it becomes available. Establishing an electronic database that contains separation records of law enforcement officers. Again, once the database is available, we will comply. Requires mental health evaluations with a focus on PTSD of law enforcement officers as a condition of continued employment. The city already performs these evaluations when they're determined to be appropriate. And required training on trauma-informed care, use of deadly force, de-escalation and harm reduction techniques, community and cultural awareness, implicit bias, procedural justice, and reconciliation techniques. Again, the city already complies with the training aspect of the new law. So again, we are complying with all of the things that are already in place, and the items, once the state gets them prepared and they're available, we will comply with those as well. So I hope that the information that we quickly shared with you this evening is helpful in gaining a better understanding of police operations in the city. At this time, we want to open up the floor. In addition to city council and panel members, there are 61 participants who have registered for the event. And in order to be fair, so that everyone may have an opportunity to be heard during the time allotted, each person representing a city household, a city business, a city organization, or who owns property in the city of Lebanon will be allowed up to 2.5 minutes to speak. Participants will be taken in the order of when their registration was received. And after all city residents, city businesses, city property owners have had an opportunity to speak, then individual media participants will be given up to 2 minutes to speak. And if time permits, then we will open the floor up to others, again, in the order of when the registration was received. Now, I want you to know that we are listening. That's the whole purpose of having this event here tonight, was to not only share information based off of questions that you've asked of us over the last several months, but we want to continue to hear from you and what your needs are or your concerns are. But with the number of participants and the number of time, the amount of time we have allotted, we may or may not respond to specific questions tonight at this time. The important thing is we want to get your input, and then we can, if there's not enough time, we can get back to you at a later period of time. And also, you know, after this event is over, if you have follow-up questions or you think of something that you didn't think of during the event, you know, please email us, call us. You know, the chief and I will make ourselves available. Again, this is an important topic, and we want to be able to address your concerns or answer your questions. So at the 2-minute mark, we're going to show a yellow slide, and the yellow slide will give you a heads up that you got 30 seconds left. And then at the end of the 2.5-minute mark, you'll see a red slide, and that means if you could please, you know, stop. Again, that's so that we can give everyone an opportunity to share their comments or their concerns. And again, with the others that are not directly affiliated with the City of Lebanon as a resident, business owner, property owner, you will be given 1.5, or you'll be given 2 minutes, excuse me, you'll be given 2 minutes. And at the 1.5 mark, you'll see the yellow block. And then at the 2-minute mark, you'll see the red slide. So again, we're going to take you in order of when we received your registration. Okay, so our first person is Edward Lynch. So Ed. If you can unmute, Ed.
Apologize for that. My name is Edward Lynch. I'm a city resident. Also, businesses here in the city. I appreciate the information that was provided this evening. Thought it was very informative. I care deeply about the city and our community. I think this is a very important topic. At this time, I don't have any particular comments, so I'm curious to see what other members of our community have to offer. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Our next participant is Becky Woodhouse.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Becky.
Hi. I really appreciate all the effort that you've put in here tonight. I think, well, I can only speak for myself, and I have the greatest respect for how thorough you are, and you're excellent at record keeping. You always have statistics, and they're relevant statistics. Everything you've mentioned tonight has been very relevant. I think maybe my comment for this evening and for this entire conversation, which is so close to my heart, it kind of makes my heart race a little bit. because I feel so passionate about it, is that in light of the incidents that have happened this year and the emotion and the tension that's felt within the entire country, and then locally as well, we have very passionate, well-meaning, intentioned people in the city. I felt like the conversation was a little bit in reverse. And even tonight, when you start out with statistics from the 1700s, while it is relevant on a planning and logistics scale, it's not really what people wanted to hear. And when we were gathered together during the march, it felt like the message of, we would not allow this to happen in our town. We are here to protect and serve the entire town, regardless of race. That's not what it felt like came across. What felt like came across was, well, I remember specifically hearing, we need to respect authority. And I think by the way that march went, and it was obvious that everyone there was respecting authority, meant to do that, meant to be civil. It felt like the message could have been a little bit stronger on the other end. And I say that with 100% respect for everything you do. It's not a criticism in any way. I think you've presented wonderfully this evening, but it's just not what people were looking to hear.
Okay, well, thank you, Becky, for those comments.
Yeah.
What we tried to do was answer all the questions that came in over the months. And we
Right.
just thought we could give you a good background, but I hear what you're saying, and we're going to continue to have a continued dialogue. So we will take that into consideration on other meetings.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next person is Sue or Jerry Fish.
They're no longer on.
Oh, okay. Okay, so the next person is Alberto Segarra.
They are not on also. You have to skip down to Joya Morsi.
Okay. Joya?
There we go. Yeah, the information was all very informative, and I feel that it was relevant. I think that we're just here to pretty much show our support for the police department. We feel that the chief is doing a fantastic job leading the city. All of his officers are amazing. We've dealt with them. I mean, owning properties downtown in the market, we've dealt with a number of the officers many times for many different reasons. And it's always been very positive. And I mean, going back to whether you want to refer to it as a march or a protest, again, like Becky said, I don't speak for everyone, but I know that I did see a lot of disrespect. We were on the receiving end of that, definitely. And the police officers and the chief went above and beyond in trying to maintain order and make sure that everyone was safe. And I didn't witness any disrespect on their end towards anyone at all.
Sure.
I didn't hear anything. And I think that the police department has done an amazing job doing their job and respecting everyone. I mean, when we've had to call the police, it hasn't been, we've called them on Black people, Asian people, white people, and seeing the police response to those calls. The police have always been respectful when they've arrived on the scene, and they've been respectful of the person that they're there to talk to, regardless of what race or gender they are. I've just never seen anything that would indicate that there is any level of racism or any negativity towards anyone in our community from that police department. We think they do a wonderful job, and we will support them. Do you want to say anything?
Thank you.
That's fine.
We're good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next resident is Cornell Wilson. You need to unmute.
I think it's possible that Mr. Wilson's microphone may not be working or hooked up.
How do you hear me? I am.
Yes, perfect.
Now you're good, Cornell.
All right. Well, real quick, it's more of questions or things to look in for the future rather than making a statement. And a lot of it's from your slides, but I would suggest maybe, do you do any advertising local, or to get local people, help them pass the test or help them get into the academy? I know you have 1 or 2 local officers who grew up here, but maybe you can advertise more locally and try to help them. I know in Lancaster, they even help them take tests or help them get ready to go to the academy. So maybe that's an option too, to get some more diversity. Also, maybe, I know your officers are not trained to deal with all type of social issues, and sometimes they come upon social issues rather than a theft or something. For example, there was a fight in front of my house of a couple, and the girlfriend and the ex-girlfriend, and like, if they could follow up and say, hey, we have mediation services in Lebanon, or we have counseling services, maybe you or neighborhood neighbors mediation, maybe you can go to that or help that. 3, it's been talked a lot about, but maybe you could have a community policing board or community board that's working with the police. I know that's been brought up many times, but it doesn't seem like it comes to fruition. And the 2 other things is I would wonder why, if you should have 60 or 64 police officers, why you only always have around 40 to 43, or sometimes even in the 30s. I know the 30s are probably because people just retired or out sick, but why not have some more police officers if that's what they're telling you should have? And last but not least, in your statistics, I think when you have a statistics of race, it should add up to 100, but none of them numbers added up to 100. So I was wondering how that happens.
Oh, because Asian, there's very small percentages for other races. What I did was I just took Hispanic, Black, Hispanic.
I mean,
Was it that slide or the slide?
no, the
before
one that says like 60% is white and 44% is Hispanic, that already goes over 100 right away. Like, I didn't know why.
Oh, because Hispanic is not a race.
Okay.
And so it can include several. So it's actually not included in the 100%. The 100% would be the races, whereas Hispanic is your ethnicity.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Cornell. Next is Dwayne Scott.
Oh, sorry, he's no longer on.
Okay, now Alisher Amnavo said he is on his phone driving, so he can't talk. He did email me some questions, so I will deal with him directly. Rafael Torres.
I believe that Mr. Torres is still muted.
Looks like he's trying to call in on his phone.
Hello.
There you go.
I'm sorry, I apologize. I had
That's
some
okay.
technical difficulties here.
Hey, it happens to the best of us.
I just wanted to thank you for at least making the attempt to have this town hall. I don't have any questions formulated. I just wanted to be an observer and a listener. Many times we fail to listen. We do a lot more talking and throwing, statistics or opinions at people rather than actually actively listening. We all want the best for ourselves, for our families, for our community, for Lebanon City, for Lebanon County. We just need to actively listen, respectfully listen, and make it a point to find common things that we have in common to make it better, inclusive, diverse, innovative, energetic, for a better city to grow not only in 2020 but beyond. So thank you for taking the time out to have the town hall, and for everyone who has joined the call. Thank you.
Thank you, Rafael. And again, if you think of any questions after the event is over or later on, please don't hesitate to email us.
I will. Thank you. Have a good
Thank
evening.
you. Thank you for participating. Okay, Jan Falk is our next citizen.
She's no longer on.
Okay. So United Way, representing United Way, Dee Dee Carmichael.
Hi. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hey, everybody. Again, I'm just here as an observer to listen to tonight's conversation. I just want to say thank you to all the panelists, and thank you to the Mayor Capello, for holding this session tonight for everybody. At United Way, we really want to be a part of this conversation about the issues in our community. And this is definitely a big topic, especially in lieu of all the events that have happened this year. So thank you for holding this forum, and we'd love to be a player at the table moving forward as these conversations progress. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dee Dee. Our next resident is Amare Abrure. You're muted, Melissa.
He is not on. The next one would be Ali Parado.
Okay. Who's the 507 number? Do you know who that is?
That's Yellow Brick Robotics.
Oh, okay. So Ali is representing SARC, and there are several people from SARC who have signed up. So again, we're limiting one speaker per organization due to the number of people on the event. So Ali is the executive director of SARC here in Lebanon.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. And thanks for the opportunity to ask a question. I think we've got a number of SARC folks on here who are really interested in participating tonight. As I think all of the panelists know, SARC is an organization that serves survivors of sexual violence. And so we work with the victims of crime very often in our communities, providing healing opportunities and helping them to discern the path to justice and what that looks like for them. And one of the things that we have noticed and heard in our own internal work in enhancing our capacity for racial justice and for serving the whole of our community and all people in our community is that oftentimes people of color do not feel safe or represented in the systems that are often put forth as justice options. So I have a couple of questions based on the presentation tonight and would love a follow-up email or opportunity to talk with you about it. First, I would love to know more about the Criminal Justice Advisory Board. It sounds like it's a phenomenal opportunity for getting involved and connected. And as a victim service provider in the community, I think victim voices and experiences are important to have in that setting. And so if there's an opportunity for a representative of SARC to participate on that board, I think it would be a valuable experience and we could bring a lot to the table in discussing that. In the same vein, I've seen some really creative things happening in communities around our community and around the country as well, but even locally in Reading, Schuylkill County, opportunities for different community service organizations to come together with local police departments or district attorney's offices to provide enhanced training opportunity, collaborative communication on responding to the community and community's needs, recognizing that there's often disproportionate representation in arrests and sentencing, and in just feeling safe and accessing justice systems. So for example, I know in Berks County, the LGBT Center, NAACP, and Safe Berks, as well as Abilities, a disability rights organization, is working collaboratively with police departments. And I would love to see something like that happen. I think solutions come from community engagement and involvement.
Okay, thank you. Our next is Dr. Jeffrey Yoakum.
He's not on.
Okay, Sharon Zook.
Yes. Yep.
There, can you hear me now? Am I on?
Yes, go ahead, Sharon.
Okay, hi.
Hello.
I was mostly calling in to visit. I mean, just to listen in, not necessarily to raise questions, but it seems like I call the police a lot. I am involved in various community type organizations, and I call the police a lot for a lot of different issues that are going on in the community. And it's been evident to me that they have some training in crises intervention and mental health, which has been, and they've showed a lot of concern in their responses. And I know that the city is doing something right with making sure they're getting that training. So I just wanted to let you know that. And there are times when I don't know, there's a problem in the community and I don't really know who's best to address it. And it seems like the police are one of the good resources to reach out to. They wear a lot of hats in this community and can get a person pointed in the right direction. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Sharon. Okay, so next we have Joshua Spalding.
He is not on.
Okay.
Either is Dorothy Agu.
Michelle Ann Helms.
Yes.
I know she was on.
Hello, can you hear us?
Yes.
Hey, thank you all for joining tonight. This is Daniel and Michael Ann Helms, residents in Lebanon. I was particularly curious, Chief Briner, just in general, as you being the lead of the police department, what kind of, from the protests and the march and the things you've been working with the mayor, what kind of things I haven't heard you particularly say, like even plans for 2021 or any new or response to, just this process?
Well, I think that we're going to continue to do what we're already doing, and reaching out to people the way we have been, trying to have these conversations and continue these conversations in through 21 and hopefully through the end of 21 to 22. And we'll keep on improving what we need to improve and sustain what we do the best.
Thank you. And that was all. Thanks.
Oh, okay. Again, thank you for participating. And if you have any additional questions, again, feel free to email us. George Rodriguez?
No, we'll have to move to Lori Burris.
Okay. Hi, Lori.
Okay, I was muted. I'm sorry.
There you go. We can
You can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello, my name is Lori Burris. I'm going to tell a little story, and I timed it, so this should only take me 2 minutes. 2 summers ago, I was stopped by a police officer, supposedly because my car was stolen. I was angry and afraid, and my passengers were 3 of my young nieces who were confused and scared. During our conversation, the officer admitted he had run my plates and knew that the car wasn't stolen. However, he proceeded to look into my car with a flashlight. I asked myself, if he knew the car wasn't stolen, then why did he pull me over? And why did he feel the need to do a visual search of my car, as if I had done something wrong? I've grown up in Lebanon. I've had mostly positive experiences with police officers, including the police chief of my childhood hometown, Cornwall, Goostown. Having the benefit of these positive interactions helped me stay calm and cooperate, even though I knew that there was no good reason to pull me over and likely was I being profiled. Many of our young people haven't experienced enough positive interactions with police, and so a very negative stigma surrounds the police. There is a lot of distrust and animosity that will only weaken our community. I believe Lebanon should have a community policing group to foster trust and connect our diverse community. As I drive around the city, I see yard signs that say, I support the police. But then I think, are those signs in every neighborhood in the city? I believe a community policing group can bring trust and strengthen our diverse community. And Lebanon has seen this as an important aspect in our growth under previous leadership. I want to see these signs in all areas of our city and for no child to be fearful of the police. That's my comment.
Thank you, Lori.
And
So,
also,
go ahead.
I just want to let you, and you and I have had the pleasure of talking. I definitely will volunteer on any kind of group like that, because it would be a diverse group involving the police, involving like mental health systems, and they've been very successful across the United States. But go ahead.
I just wanted to say that, yes, we've had conversations before. This is the first I heard of this incident. again, that's why we had that complaint process. And I'm sorry that this was 2 years ago, but that's something that we can have a further conversation after tonight. But again, regarding particular issues in your neighborhood, I know you no longer reside in the city of Lebanon, but I know your nephew is still here. But we tried, when you were talking about the community, the park walk and talks and our neighborhood watch associations, we definitely want to be involved in each neighborhood. Right. And whether it's a neighborhood watch, whether it's the park walk and talk, but those are things, again, that we continue to have conversations on. But we are in our most diverse neighborhoods, probably more than the other areas. And again, we want to hear from all of our residents and make sure that all of the concerns get addressed. And that's sometimes why these neighborhood watch associations are formed, because of particular concerns that have come up in a neighborhood. But again, yours wasn't regarding the neighborhood per se, but I'm not sure where it happened at. So it happened in the city of Lebanon?
Actually, it was, where is that? It's near the beer place on 16th Street in Cumberland. So I guess that was North Cornwall.
Okay.
Correct? It was North Cornwall.
Okay.
I wanted to have the benefit of that it was a young policeman, but I think as a person of color and that issue of not feeling safe. And if he made a mistake, he made a mistake. The question is, why did he have to stop me? And then I think the other thing that was frustrating, that was sad to me as an adult, was I wrote a letter for a complaint, but I was worried about what the consequence of writing that letter would be. And then have to explain to my family and to my children, and to have to give them that speech about going out in public and being safe. It's a hard thing. It's a hard thing. So whatever I can do, please contact me, and hopefully we can do community policing. I think it would be a great asset to Lebanon.
Okay. Thank you, Lori, for your comments.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So next is Monica Boyer.
Do you want a video?
Oh,
no?
hello. Oh, I'm sorry, I had to unmute and all that.
Now we got you.
Hi, Mayor. Again, I just want to echo everybody else's thank yous for bringing everybody here. And I'm sorry I met my nieces. So Monica Boyer is my niece and her dog. But anyway, just wanted to also, I guess, mimic some of the thoughts of Lori as a parent of 2 children of color, as a white parent of 2 children of color. I feel that I am treated differently in many aspects when I am by myself and when I am with my children. I raise my children to be respectful of authority and respectful of police officers because I come from a large police background family. And one thing that kind of concerns me in these past several years is my children have gone from being respectful of police officers to being fearful of police officers. So they are not just in this community of Lebanon. One's now in college in New Jersey, and one is still in Lebanon, finishing high school this year. But they're going to be going out into the community. And no matter how much security they might have felt in the past, I would really like some way for them to be able to continue to feel that security, that they can go out and not worry about their color, and if they're walking at night somewhere, or if they have a hoodie up. It's terrible that I have to tell my daughter when she goes out to run in the morning that I don't like that she goes out because it's dark outside. And even though she says I won't wear a hoodie, I still fear for their safety. And not just in our community, but knowing that they're going to be in the community throughout the United States, in the world, wherever they decide to go. So I just have concerns about that. I've worked with the police with my work position in many activities with National Night Out programs. I've also worked with the wonderful job they do with greeting the kids for kid cards, and they are fantastic. I appreciate all the respect that they give to the kids and to the parents that show up for events like that, like Healthy Kids Day. So definitely, you know, a group where people can see the police officers, you know, acting more and more with the community and showing that respect, because we need to get back to the respectfulness and not the fearfulness. I think that's it. And also, you know what, on slide number, I wrote it down. On slide number 24, when Sherry, when you talk about the different trainings that the police get and the mental health trainings, I did just want to comment that it's not mentioned, I don't know if it's included, but even trainings on working with people with autism and with intellectual disabilities. And if there's any way that we can, you know, get that included with the trainings, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. All right. Next on our list is John Bauer.
Hi, Mayor Capello. Hi, panel.
Hi, John.
I just want to tell you, we've had a lot of police officer incidents where, not incidents, but where we've had interaction with the police here in Lebanon. With my business, we've had other incidents that have happened in other cities. And I will tell you that the way things are handled here in Lebanon, we are thrilled with the way the response times are, with when the officers come to our business and how they deal with it. We just couldn't be more pleased. I will tell you, in dealing with other cities, you guys are far exceeding other towns where my stores have been or currently are. So hats off to you guys for doing a great job. You know, I just hats off. Very good job, guys.
Thank you, John. Next on our list is Konstantinos.
We're gonna skip to, he's not on no longer, so we're gonna go to Michael Ritter.
Okay, Michael Ritter is with DVI. There you go. Hi, Mike.
Hello, how is everyone?
Good, how are you?
Oh, hanging in there, hanging in there. I likewise want to thank everybody for your time tonight and the wonderful comments that people have shared. I sort of thought I was going to just observe as well, but as we've talked, I've kind of formulated some thoughts and I think a question as well. I kind of get the sense that there's a lot of intention that the city and the police department in particular have brought to improving processes, improving training, improving relations. I wonder though, given some of the comments, if that intention perhaps falls a little short when we talk externally reaching out to the community. It sounds like there's a lot of great things that have happened in the last couple of years and continue to happen. I'm not so sure that the community was maybe necessarily aware of some of those initiatives and projects. That's just an observation from conversations tonight and comments that folks have made. We have to think about not just what are we doing intentionally internally, but what are we doing intentionally to wrap up into the process as well. I also wonder too if while there's a lot of wonderful things happening with the city police department, if there's been consideration or increasing awareness of this, maybe this idea that the broader culture around in other communities in the county, but other communities around our country as well, if that maybe seeps into a mindset regarding police locally, and maybe that has to be part of the conversation as well. And then I just have a real quick question. I'm wondering if the city has a residency requirement for police officers. I don't believe that came up in the presentation.
No, we do not. I believe back when my husband was a police officer, I won't say how long ago that was, there was a residency requirement, but it's been at least, I think, and Chief, maybe you would know, 20 plus years since that was taken out of the contract. And I don't know, Mike, is that kind of typical for residency not to be a part of a contract?
Generally speaking, we represent a number of communities across Pennsylvania, a number of cities, and the residency requirement it was something that was around 20, 25 years ago. It is not around as much anymore, especially given the fact that officers can often be, they have a lot of social contacts, both through social media and things like that. And there's concerns about officers, you know, living in a town where they're also policing and their families and so on and so forth. So there's kind of arguments on both sides. It's a conversation I know the mayor and I have every so often about the pros and cons of those of those issues. And there's also another circumstance in terms of trying to make sure that residency doesn't become the end-all be-all of attracting the best candidates to be officers, right? And I know from personal experience that the city has been very selective, especially recently, about who they've chosen to hire as officers, and we've taken a very close look at officers as well. So it's, Michael, it's a bit more complicated than just, you know, like everything in life. You know, at first it looks like an easy solution and you get people more invested in the community, but there's a bunch of different other circumstances as well. Let's put it this way. Your first observation that the department has been doing a lot to try and modernize and keep up and work on a lot of these issues, that's true. This is one of those pieces to that conversation, if that makes any sense.
I appreciate that assessment.
Sure.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mike. Is Rabbi Sam on?
No, we're going to move to Benjamin Keener.
Okay. Benjamin?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for having this conversation. I appreciate the willingness to do that. I'm a city resident and care about the city and care about my neighbors, and that's part of why I'm here. I'm a dad of children of color, and I'm a white dad of children of color, and so that makes me think about my role as a dad in advocating for my children and caring about these issues. And I'm a psychologist, and so I think about mental health and the role of mental health problems in some of the issues that bring police involvement. And so I'm here just because I care about those issues. I don't have any of these issues figured out, and I don't know that I have any more intelligent questions. I appreciated hearing feedback about mental health resources and continuing to think creatively about those. But I did want to just put my care and concern to this issue and support the discussion. So I'll yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anne?
She is no longer on, so we'll, I guess, go to city council members.
Oh, no, we have Ashton Rodriguez and also Alisher. So we'll go to Ashton. Ashton Rodriguez is the one that we added. He's 32 and a half.
Ashton is trying to unmute, I think.
Hello?
There you go.
Hi.
Hi, Ashton.
So like everyone else, I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
You're welcome.
My biggest question is, we've talked a lot about like all of the things that you have done as a as a community to raise awareness and to make sure that we are doing the best that we can. And I appreciate that effort. I am also curious because in the very beginning, the way that things were discussed, it seemed as though race was not seen as a factor in a lot of the concerns that were discussed. So I'm wondering how we're addressing the national systemic problem of racism and racism within the structure of the foundation that this country was built on, if we're not seeing it as a factor that is to be considered. So I'm kind of curious as to how we're going to address an issue if it's not seen as a factor.
Janelle?
Mike, if you want to.
I would point out to Mr. Rodriguez that that we covered in the presentation the fact that the police officers of the city are going through bias training and de-escalation training, all of those subjects, and of course the training that's required on a yearly basis, which tracks national trends. And the chief can help me out, or Enoch can help me out, but all of those trainings require touching on issues of race and community and communication and different manners and modes of communication. We've talked a lot about how the department has tried to reach out to the city residents in different ways, the walk and talk and so on and so forth. So I'm not sure that I agree with the thesis that the city or the police department isn't concerned about the issues of race and how it impacts our delivery of services and our policing, because we've talked a lot as a team about making sure that we are getting training on those issues, trying to address those issues, trying to make sure that the justice is even-handed and issues are followed up on. So I think it's very much in the forefront of the mayor's mind, the chief's mind, of the members of the staff's mind. So I think we are trying to deal with an issue that's incredibly complex and trying to address those national concerns and bring them into kind of the ethos of the police department. But it, like everything else, it takes time, it takes patience, it takes training.
Oh, I appreciate that. And I recognize that you are putting a lot of work and a lot of energy and a lot of time into doing that. My question was more, as Mike had said, there's a lot of intention and a lot of conversations, and I'm curious as to what the next action steps will be to specifically address these issues and making sure that we are centralizing the voices of those who are most marginalized in our community. And that includes not just people of color, but people who are marginalized because of their sexuality and because of how able-bodied they are, and really just all of the factors that cause somebody to be oppressed. I'm curious as to how we are addressing those issues specifically and centralizing those voices.
So again, Mayor, if you don't mind, I'll just address Mr. Rodriguez's question. I know because I've done the training for the mayor and for the city and for the managers in the city that we are constantly working on educating people about the need to interact with different communities with respect and with understanding. And that includes the police department as well as the non-uniform employees of the city who provide services. Very often, obviously, the police are involved in circumstances where they're called to a situation that they have to de-escalate or defuse or things like that. It doesn't always start great, and hopefully it ends well as we've tried to deal with those issues. But I know that the city has a commitment to tolerance and to equal rights under the law, and they've that the training, the work that they've done, the work they've done on hiring and including different communities in hiring and trying to recruit differently. Again, you're planting seeds and you're hoping that they are going to harvest into something bigger, and that's what the city's working on right now. So there are concrete action steps that the mayor has already gone over in terms of recruitment, in terms of training, in terms of a different focus that the police department's undergoing. But again, I would simply say that it takes time, and these conversations are part of that.
I'd also suggest that part of this takeaway, what we learned from this meeting now, will then be able to direct us that much better in the future as to what the needs are, what the wants are.
I appreciate that. And I will agree. I saw a chat. It sounds reactive, and I get it, right? Because this is now starting to be a more in-depth conversation, and a conversation that everyone is having, and it does take time. And I hope to see these concrete action steps continue and to evolve, because while I think that this is a good starting platform, I don't think that we are anywhere near close to being done.
Okay, thanks, Ashton. All right, so now we have Alisher is back, so he can now call in or offer a comment. So if you want to. He says he doesn't have speaking rights. We show that you do. There you go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Alrighty, thank you very much. Well, first and foremost, I would like to thank all of you, like everyone else has, for taking the time to allow citizens like myself pose questions considering the nature of police engagement. I primarily have two questions that I would like to ask now. My first question being, I know you talk about kind of the ethnicity breakup in Lebanon, and I know at least one of the figures was that there is a sizable Latino population in Lebanon. I guess my first question is, how many of the total number of officers in Lebanon are bilingual, or more specifically speak both English and Spanish?
So we have several. A lot of our officers are given, well, all of our officers are given an opportunity to take a course on Spanish for law enforcement officers. And I can tell you, whenever we get applicants for police officer candidates, we are like praying that they can speak Spanish or Arabic, because we really want to diversify our police department, which is why we went out and are using these national applications to try and reach a broader area. But Enoch is probably, we have several, but it's not enough. We want more. And I don't know if Enoch, you want to offer anything on how you feel about that?
Yep. Hello, Alisher. How you doing, boss? Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
All right. So me, I am used a lot. I do speak Spanish and English. I'm bilingual. Me personally, I really do wish we had more Spanish speaking officers. You know, not only do I handle the regular amount of calls that come out, but because we do have a high population that continues to keep growing, I get those extra calls. Because right now, I think on my shift, I think I'm the only one right now is fluent in Spanish and English. So if you can imagine, I'm running around, pretty much the city as much as I can. So yeah, we definitely do need some more Spanish speaking officers, just any bilingual in any language really, because it's not just Latinos, because there's other races out here. But yeah, I'm with you, man. We definitely do need more. And I'm hoping that if anybody that's watching or is interested in being an officer that does speak bilingual, please help me out, help a brother out. Okay.
Thank you, Enoch.
And I will say that we have 2 officers, one including Enoch, that are fluent, and an additional 2 that are better at it than they want to admit. And they do a great job for us as well. So I would say that we have 4 officers.
Okay, thank you very much. My second question, is a little odd, I guess, to pose in this format, but you talk a lot about the sensitivity training that officers are taking on a regular basis in Lebanon. I guess my second question would ultimately be, what in the form of psychological evaluations do officers take? How does it look like when officers are coming into the force? How does it look like when they are in the force? Is there a kind of a system where they are constantly having reevaluation, or a kind of build off from where they were? That would ultimately be my question.
So, Mayor, I can answer that.
Okay.
Alisher, every officer who's hired by any police agency, and certainly by the city, is required before, as a condition of getting a job, of getting a full psychological examination as well as a physical examination. It's a condition of being hired. It's required both by MOPAC and by the city, and we follow that extensively. And in addition, prior to hiring, the mayor talked about it, but I'm involved in it along with the chief. The city does a significant background check on every candidate, and we have disqualified people from being hired, more than one person in a hiring cycle, because the chief is pretty significantly invested in getting the right people for the job. And so I've been involved in that as well. During a time as a police officer, we have the ability to access EAP services anytime an officer needs to. We have counseling for officers, and officers have used it. When officers go through a tough period, we've referred them without any shame or stigma to a psychologist to get a review of whether or not they're capable of continuing to do the job, because it is a tough job and when you're in the public eye, as much as officers are. In addition, I think we covered the new statutory changes that the General Assembly have put together that require psychological exams under certain circumstances. And we're certainly we've already started, we're already conforming to that, but we're going to continue to conform to that. So officers are evaluated when they're hired, they're evaluated throughout their employment with the city. And when they need services, they get services, and we have a demonstrated record of doing that. So those kind of interventions happen. They happen when an officer requests it, but they also happen when the supervisory staff sees that an officer needs help, and we've intervened that way as well. So I think we have a pretty good record of dealing with that issue.
It's also a requirement prior to entering the academy that the candidate take a psych evaluation as well.
If I could just kind of expound, I guess, with that background information. So to my understanding, you're saying that when an officer comes into the force, they receive a psychological evaluation, and throughout their time as an officer, they can either seek further psychological evaluation or kind of psychological help themselves, or if a superior officer or chooses to have them take further psychological evaluation, that they can, but there is no regular psychological evaluation that police officers kind of in a mandatory environment take regularly throughout their career.
There's no yearly psychological evaluation. It's not required by statute, it's not required by MOPEC. But again, the city does make sure that services are provided, both when requested and when we think that someone needs it. So.
Okay, thank you. That kind of more clarifies my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so that is all of the city residents, and we'll move to city council, who are also city residents, of course. But if any city councilman would like to offer a comment, we'll start with Wayne Carey if he has anything that he'd like to add. He had indicated earlier that he didn't think he'd have any comments, but we just want to make sure.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I would like to. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. I can't. The video thing I'm out with here. I would just like to sum up tonight, just kind of sum things up a little bit too, and just say thank God that Lebanon is the place to grow. And like all things that grow, there's growing pains. But through this, our city will evolve even better and continues to. We are not dead and we are not going backwards as a city. We are moving forward. So tonight, I want to thank you, Mayor, for moving us forward. I want to thank the police chief and the police department for moving us forward. And I want to thank the Lebanon citizens for continuing to dialogue so that your city can move forward too. And that's the important part. It's all three of us working, all three of these groups working together. And so this is a great start. We're not looking back. We're not standing still. Tonight, we're moving forward. So thank you all for participating.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So next is Councilman Joe Morales, but he indicated that he does not have a comment at this time, and he appreciates everyone being a part of the conversation. Is Richard Wirtz on?
No.
Chris Miller is on. Do you have any comments, Chris?
Oh, hi there.
Hi, Chris.
How are you guys doing?
Good.
Wonderful, wonderful. I just wanted to say thank you for everyone for speaking up tonight. It was great to sit here and listen. But most importantly, that unless you speak up, we can't hear your voice. So it's important that you do interact with us, whether it's with the mayor's office or with a member of city council. Come to a Zoom meeting. You don't even have to get out of your house. But come talk to us. We are here to listen, and we do want to make Lebanon the best city that there is to live in. So thank you.
Thank you. Dan Boast?
I'd just like to echo everyone saying, thanks for putting this together. I think it's been a positive conversation, and I appreciate the input of the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now at this point, we will move to the media, and they will have 2 minutes. We'll go in order of registration. So the first one is Laura LeBeau. I'm not sure if Laura's on.
She's not on.
Okay. Alana Elder.
Hi, thank you so much for sharing this information and giving me the chance to ask some questions. I'd love the chance to follow up by email since I don't want to take up too much time late at night. But I wanted to ask a couple of questions about the complaint process and the slide that had the number of complaint forms given out and those returned for investigation. And I just wanted to clarify what the significance of those numbers are for you, why you wanted to highlight them, and just kind of a related question, you mentioned that it's incumbent on the police force to make sure people know how to submit those complaints. So I'm curious, like, what that outreach looks like as well.
I do believe we have it on the police page of our website. And we've also I believe we had placed it on social media, but we definitely have discussed it at council meetings. And it probably, if we did place it on social media, it may not have been for a while. So we should probably do something more along those lines as well. But it's definitely on the police page, and it has been on there since before I was mayor.
And how do you understand that difference between, if I'm understanding it right, people who ask for complaint forms and then people who return them to be investigated, or investigations that are carried out?
Go ahead, Chief.
Thank you. Yeah, so somebody may come in and make a complaint or want to make a complaint. We will listen to them. We'll try to mediate that complaint while we're there, while they're in person with us. And then if they want a complaint, a written complaint form, we provide them the written complaint form. They can take that home. They can fill it out, bring it back with the details of the incident, and we can investigate that incident. That's the process in the simplest term.
Okay, thank you. And then I know that these this conversation will you're planning on continuing it. And I was curious if in the future there are any plans to go to trusted community organizations, or I know that it's really limited with COVID right now as far as like the format of these discussions. But yeah, I'm curious how you are, if you're planning to do some different formats that don't maybe require people to have Zoom access to Zoom, or to that maybe focus more on like learning from what people are saying in the community first, and kind of looking at statistics second, if that makes sense.
Yes, Alana, that's a great question. And really, I wanted this meeting to be in person, and that is why it took so long. And then we thought this was a third time we thought we were going to have an in-person meeting. And then because of additional mitigation measures, it got pushed to virtual, because I didn't want to hold off on it any longer, because the community had waited long enough. They really had tremendous amount of patience because they were asking for this meeting for quite some time. As to the format of future discussions, that's something that we haven't decided on. Tonight, we really wanted to spend that first half hour in getting information out there, because I had received so many questions ahead of time, and the presentation was to answer all of those questions. At least I hope it answered most of those questions, but I prepared it based on the questions that were generated over the last several months. So of course, future presentations would probably be somewhat different because we do have that background now. So we shared that information, so now we can build upon the conversation because hopefully everyone's been somewhat educated on what's in place, what we're going to do. And if people could not participate tonight, hopefully they can watch this on YouTube and get caught up, and then we can just build upon the conversation. So we haven't decided exactly what the future will look like, but of course, we're going to continue to engage our community, and we'll see how that plays out.
Thanks.
Thank you. Douglas Stump.
I think Mr. Stump said he has no questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thanks, Doug. Okay, Paula Wolf. I know she was on. There she is.
I don't have any questions.
Okay, Paula, thank you.
You
know how
very,
to
very good. Thank you.
Okay, Matthew Toth.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Looking at some of your community outreach programs, it looks like getting your police officers front and center into the community seems to be your highlight. but given with COVID right now, that seems to be harder and harder to do. I was wondering if the chief and if I'm sorry about pronouncing your name incorrectly, Mr. Enick, I apologize again, could talk a little bit about how you are going to try and do that in this kind of COVID age as we have now.
Well, you're correct. It is difficult, and we've gotten back into some of our programs, such as the radio spot. So we've gotten back into that. The schools we're not going into, unfortunately. So I don't believe we'll see a career day this year unless they move it to the end of the year and in 21, and hopefully we're back to some normalcy in 21. So yeah, you're right. A lot of that has been put on hold, and what we do now is make every effort to make ourselves visible and approachable when we're on our regular patrols and conducting our park walk and talk, since we can't meet them in our normal, outreaches.
Unfortunately, COVID has had a negative impact in many, many areas.
Just to follow up on that, for the complaint process, is there any way for that process to be anonymous for someone who may have a complaint, or is there more of a direct one-on-one process?
So we typically ask for a name to be attached to the document. However, it doesn't need to be. But we want as much information as possible so that we can conduct a thorough and proper investigation. So if we're missing information, it just adds to the difficulty in investigation. So as much information as possible, but you can make a complaint on behalf of someone else.
Thank you. That was my last question. Thank you for doing this.
Thank Matthew. Okay, Hal Conte, he has been so patient. He had his hand raised for quite some time, and I ignored him. Not on purpose, Hal.
Yeah, no, you can hear me and see me now, right? Or
I can hear you.
I don't know why the video camera isn't working, but my actual question for you is, you mentioned this, the argument about moving towards this system where police are hired based on numbers related to some sort of like effectiveness. You said like almost like a supply demand based on demand, and you said you were considering looking into that. How would that work?
Well, not hiring. We were talking about the number of officers in a department, that there are several methods used, and that was one based on like the need, or let me get exactly how I said it. Sorry.
No, totally fine.
Oh, I think
basically the supply and demand model in terms of the amount of police officers. It sounded like you said the number of police officers on the street.
Mayor, if you don't mind,
Yeah,
Mr. Conte, this is Michael Miller. There are several methods by which various agencies try to, come up with a notion of how many police officers per 100,000 or how many police officers per 10,000 or whatever is necessary to provide good services. I think what the mayor was saying earlier in her speech is that the city is always keeping an eye on those statistics to make sure that there are sufficient number of police officers to provide services that are aligned with kind of those statistics generally. Like any other statistic, one size doesn't fit all, right? I mean, they're a large data set, and really what the city has found is even when you apply those statistics, what you're really looking for is good officers like Enoch and the other officers that the city has make up for numbers. Numbers can be fungible. So I think what the city's trying to do is find that sweet spot between the number of officers they need, service they provide, the amount of training that they have, and what fits in the budget. And I think that's all the mayor was trying to say, that we do keep an eye on those statistics, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering if like you were going to move towards some new method of deploying like police in certain areas, depending on like more analysis of where they're needed, which is almost what it sounded like you were saying, but I wasn't sure if that's what you meant. And the other question is about the community outreach, community engagement. You, I think it was Sherry, Ms. Capello said about that going over this, looking at all communities in terms of citizens engagement or citizens community. You said you might look at, or you considering alternative methods for communities to reach out to and be involved with police, and for police to basically have relations with these communities. I was just wondering, like, are you looking at particular methods or considering particular methods?
No, tonight was our first step, just to gather input from our community to hear what their concerns are. And then we'll kind of put that all together and have a discussion. And then again, in the future, possibly have continued dialogue with the community again, but I don't have anything that, specifically that we've decided on. We're mainly listening and gathering information at this point and sharing information. So this is kind of like our very first step.
So basically what you're saying is right now, the whole point of this is to start off having the conversation. Have any like things been suggested even before this? Have things been debated internally even before this meeting in terms of what changes you might make, or what terms of engagement or outreach you might do?
Well, we discussed doing this exactly, having a discussion with the community. And again, we wanted it to be in person, but because of COVID, we couldn't have that. So, we're doing it virtually, so at least we can get that input. And again, we'll continue. I mean, we answer a lot of calls, emails, try and provide as much information as we can. And there's a lot of give and take with conversations with the community. This was just a concentrated focus on sharing of information and trying to get as much input as we can.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so that is all of the media. So now we will move to the individuals who are not a city resident, are not a part of a city business, do not own property in the city, but they are interested in police operations all the same. So our first couple would be Melissa and Brad Eisenhower. Okay, we can hear you now.
Okay. I just wanted to say that the information that you provided, it seems a lot of the information in there is regarding the racism and that kind of information. I keep hearing that a lot, and I think some of that stuff needs to be taken out of the presentation a little bit. It's really towards segregation a lot. I am a Latin female myself, and I keep hearing that. I know there's a lot of that going around, but having that information in the presentation, I don't think helps. I think that kind of says that there is that in the community, and it's kind of pushing that a lot. And I don't think that should be really targeted. I know me personally, I haven't had pleasant interactions with the police department in the city. But the presentation was good besides just that information. But I don't really have any questions other than that.
Okay. So we believe we're answering the questions that were asked, but we value your opinion and we'll note that. Thank you. Thank you for participating. Okay, our next person is Bryn Brady.
Oh, they are no longer on.
Okay. Mike Riley.
They are no longer on.
Mike Schroeder.
No, he's no longer on either.
Ryan Foss.
No, we'll go down to Soon Slayman.
Okay, Soon. Oh, Mike says he's on.
Oh.
So Soon, if you could hold your thought and.
Oh, he's at the top for some reason. He's not in the alphabetical order. That's strange.
Oh. Michael?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for hosting this. Very informative. I see that the City of Lebanon Police Department provides both the City Council members and to local media summaries of police-related incidents. And I'm wondering how ordinary citizens can gain access to data on police-related incidents in the City of Lebanon and in Lebanon County as a whole. For instance, citations issued for public drunkenness, small drug possession, arrest for Class A, B, and C misdemeanors, and for felonies. How do ordinary citizens gain access to that information?
So you can go on to a unified portal with the state. And if you know the community or county in which the offense occurred and the person's name, or it gives you several different ways to research. You don't even need to have a date of birth. It makes it a little bit easier. But as long as you have the person's name.
I know that the city provides, for instance, to the media, like with Lebtown, for instance, or the Lebanon Daily News, the police log, right? Do the reporters go to the state website, or is that provided in a compendium to local media?
Okay, I can answer that, but I'll allow Chief if you want to, since you're the one who put it out.
Right. So what I do is when there is a citation, a non-traffic citation, or a criminal charge, which is a misdemeanor and or a felony criminal complaint that is filed, I release that. And I put that on a media release, which goes out to a host of media outlets. That information is then funneled to their listeners and or readers. That's how that works. If you're looking for specific crime stats, you can go to the state's UCR, Uniform Crime Reporting System. You can go to the UCR website and you can research Lebanon County and jurisdictions within Lebanon County and find some of the information you're looking for as well.
Okay, so the information then is not made available to the general public, but only to local media?
Well, it's being made available to the general public through the local media.
Well, right, but what if a citizen does not want to go through local media and wants to see the reports themselves?
It's posted, I email it, so it's not posted anywhere else other than the email.
Is there a reason not to post it?
There is no other location at this time.
Is there a reason not to make it publicly available on the police department's website?
I don't know that anyone's ever asked. I don't know if we've ever thought about it.
That's what I was just going to say. It hasn't been asked, and if it has been asked, it's been prior to me. So no.
Okay, thank you.
It's something that we can look into, Mike.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Now we go down to Soon. Yes.
I don't have any question. I had to miss the first hour, so thank you. It's been interesting.
Okay. Thank you for participating. Brittany?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. I wrote a bunch down. I wasn't sure if I would get a chance to speak or not. I do appreciate this. I really liked your presentation, Sherry. I appreciate all those facts and laying out things that were specific to the questions we've been asking in the petition. I was going to send you an email as well. I just have some suggestions. I think somebody did mention real quick about the police being in school for a career day or something, but that might be an option more to engage younger, because it sounds like, I know Lori and Monica mentioned about their kids. So I think that's a good way for the police to be engaged. And I think in more of a fun way would also be a good way, like maybe do basketball games. I know you said you do the reading with the children, but where they don't see you guys in uniforms as much, I think that's an idea about the recruitment of having police in their community. Seeing them outside of their uniform makes them more humanistic, and to be able to see them as humans instead of people being authoritative takes back the fear and puts in more trust, I think. So those are some suggestions. I know Monica also said about the IDD, intellectual disability or autism trainings as well. I would also agree with that. I'm sure that's part of some of the implicit bias, the sensitivity training, but it's always good to have additional trainings. And then I don't want to speak for Ashton, but I think he was trying to talk more about people's voices being heard, people who are usually oppressed or not heard. I think I've heard a lot of people talking about the Citizens Board. I heard a lot about the advisory board. I think our leadership is not very representative of Lebanon City, and you've showed how many our Hispanic population. I don't think our leadership really has that diversity. So I think involving more voices that are representative is what he was trying to get to. But again, I don't want to speak for Mr. Rodriguez. So that's all I have to say.
Okay. Thank you, Brittany.
Thank you.
Next on our list is Pastor Tony Fields.
The last one is Fitzroy Lewis to speak. He'll be the last one because no one else from the list is on.
Okay. So Fitzroy is actually with SARC, but if he wants to, we're a little bit past our time, but if he wants to offer a comment, we'll let him do that.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. So thank you very much directly for having this conversation. One of the things that I wanted to say is that, perception is reality, at least for the person who's doing the perceiving, right? Someone outside of that perceiving may not be able to empathize with that individual's reality at the moment. So we heard some anecdotal comments that people have had great interaction with the police, so everything is great, thumbs up. I respect the police. I believe, as I said to the chief, the police officers put themselves on the line every day because they never know what they are going to encounter, right? So if we respect that and we respect the fact that they are doing a very difficult task, think about the situations that they oftentimes put themselves in. So we can appreciate the danger that's involved in their work. And so for the individuals who have great interaction with them, 2 thumbs up. But what about, like Lori Burris gave an example, what about individuals who have had historically unfair, unjust interaction with the police? How does that then become the reality through which they are going to interact? It doesn't make the reality of good interactions for someone else null and void. But good interactions for one person does not make bad interactions for another null and void either. So the reality that we have to embrace is being able to empathize with where each individual or community is coming from. It is not to justify, it is simply to say, I understand where you are. So how can we as a community, how can we together make it better? How can we move away from whatever has brought about the distrust, the disillusionment? How can we together go forward and make it better for everyone in our community? And we can only do it together. We can only do it by having conversations. So can we do that? Can we draw a roadmap together in order to make better happen for us?
Fitzroy, I hear what you're saying. I agree with you. And thank you so much for your comments. You know, it's the city's intent to maintain and improve your trust, our community's trust. And we're here to serve the people and provide law and order in a fair and transparent manner. That's our pledge. That's what we want to do. That's what we're going to do. There's always room for improvement. We're going to continue to have these conversations, but I just really appreciate everyone from the community that participated in this event tonight, that did hop onto our Zoom call, that offered their input. We will take every comment into serious consideration with the next step and what we do. But again, we just want to thank you, and we wish you happy holidays, and thank you for your interest. And with that, I'll say good night. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
You too.